All right, guys. Welcome to the Coach Connection Mastering Youth Sports with Coach Eric and Coach Sergio. It's our first podcast ever, number one in the books. So we're going to just start first, just introducing ourselves real quick. I'm Coach Eric, and I've been coaching for like 9 years. I coach, I would say 60% of my clients are youth athletes in all levels of the athletic spectrum. And then the other 40% are adults from the ages of 30 to 60. I've coached 60-year-olds, and I've also coached, obviously, people around our age. I'm 35. Coach Sergio, how old are you?
I'm going to be 35 in a couple of weeks here.
Perfect. So you see,
Yeah,
so we're 35, mid 30 coaches. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it for me. How about Sergio? What do you got to say?
just a quick intro. I've been a soccer coach, a youth soccer coach for going on 10 years now. Before that, I was a player, just like we all were growing up. Just fell in love with sports, studying different aspects of training, and then just applying these things and doing them on the field and seeing what works. Over the years, built up a little bit of I think we both have a little bit of a methodology of how to really get the results that the athletes are looking for long term, and just understanding the whole development process from the physical standpoint, and just my focus is soccer, but of course, like anything, I think it's important to be well rounded, to be successful in your field, so there's I think part of the reason for this is to get out some good information, because there's a lot of information just floating around, and if you don't know how to go through it, Eric, you've been really helpful to me with that sense, at least saying, hey, study this, don't study this, or, I'm always sending you stuff to look over, to say, hey, is this legit or not? That's one of my,
Yeah,
our
I love
daily
that.
conversations.
Yeah, no, I love that. So that's also too, so we can touch base on that, is why we decided to make the podcast, because we be hanging out talking about all these topics, and then after we're done, we're like, man, that would have been a great podcast, just because we're just talking about the stuff we're learning. Because I feel like everything you're saying there is just us trying to figure out like what can we do better to like provide a better service to all the kids and everybody that we just come in contact with. Obviously, this podcast is going to be mostly geared towards athletics and kids. And that's mostly the conversations we talk about most of the time. We're also going to be talking about other stuff. Another cool thing that I think people should know is that we've been friends for since we were 12. So that's 23 years of friendship. So that's another thing why we felt like it was really cool to get the podcast going, because it would be like friends talking to each other that really know each other. And then of course too, been trying to do this coaching thing for like now almost a decade. Both of us close to it. You're at the decade. I'm really close to it. And so I think that's important, because longevity is such an important factor of actually not only becoming a successful like person at what you do, but also getting good at what you do. Because most people want to be good in like year one, year two, and I'm sure you can relate, right? Like how we used to coach when we first started to like the way we coach now. It's probably like night and day, right?
That's cringe. That's why cringe was invented.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
feeling is a little bit cringe, but that's it shouldn't be cringe in a way, because once you understand the learning process, it's like it's necessary. You have to go through those steps, just like the athletes. We both work with athletes from all levels, and it's easy to judge a beginner. It's easy to judge a beginner and to say, hey, this guy, and I've been guilty of it myself. There's been times where I've been wrong, just flat out wrong about kid, where I thought, man, this kid is going to have a hard time. But, again, over the years, you start to see the process, you start to see late bloomers, kids flourish. And it's beautiful, So I've come out around, and I feel like I try to be as open minded as possible, because everybody can get better. That is a fact, and how much, it's up to them, right? Of course, but I think that experience has only come through time, and again, just being okay with sucking, right?
Right. I like the saying, before you continue, I like the saying, right? You got to give yourself permission to suck. Is
There
the
you
mean
go.
way, right? And then the nice way is you got to give yourself permission to learn. They both mean the same thing, but one's just a little more like realistic, especially in the beginning. And
Yeah,
would
well,
you
that's how
say
you feel.
this has to do with like the first impressions on players?
Correct. And I definitely wanted to touch on that, because it's, today's May 1st, which is basically open door for signing season in the travel soccer world, and it's the feeding frenzy has begun, as you know. And, I think first impression can go a long way, man. I'll give you a specific example. Like, this little kid showed up yesterday to tryouts, and he shook my hand so hard and introduced himself. And I was like, all right, let's see what this guy can do. He's got some confidence. And, not surprisingly, he expressed himself on the field. And even though he was little, like he fought hard. And I went and I talked to another coach. Hey, what do you think about this guy? Right away, the first thing, you know what he said? Firm handshake.
Uh,
Yeah, firm handshake. I was like, "Yep, that's him." And he's like, "Oh yeah, the firm handshakes." Just not just obviously he could play a little bit, but it wasn't a big factor into me inviting him back. I'll be honest with you, because that confidence is rare, more and more.
It's harder to find. It's the hardest thing to find, right?
Yeah.
So touching base on so first impressions obviously matter big time, and how much definitely like engaging with different players. For me and you, we're with players for long periods of time because what we do is good, and we also connect. Which if you're trying to like probably if you're listening to this, maybe you want to get into coaching. So like the first tip we can give you is you gotta learn how to be like cool with whoever you train. How you go about that and how you balance that like relationship from like the work side to the friend side, because it depends on like the way you want to coach. For me, I've always thought that like if somebody likes me, they're more likely to go through a wall for me than the opposite way, than if like they fear me. But what's your take on that, coach? What do you think about that?
No, I agree, and I've when you want to coach highly competitive, you have to walk that line, right? Because I definitely consider myself a player's coach in the same way. I really do love them, and I do want the best for them. I don't want them in a toxic environment. However, sometimes they do need to be pushed. And there does need to be discipline. There does need to be structure. There does need to be clear boundaries where, okay, we're putting all this aside for the team, for the results, for game day, because all of those things will come up again. But I wanted to throw it back to you, actually, Eric. I wanted to ask you, like, going back to first impression. Like, I know, again, we've talked about this a lot, but when I first meet a client the first time, I'm trying to pick up on everything as much as possible. Not necessarily from the athletic standpoint, but from who this guy is.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think that was where we were gonna touch base next. Anyway, I was gonna go into that. Speaking of like, okay, when I first board a player, right? Because I get a lot of beginners too, like a lot of kids that are not that maybe their goal is to play travel one day, but right now they're like before rec and they're learning how to play. Maybe they've played a little bit with some friends, or maybe they played a little bit with family, or they watch it and they like it and they're interested by it, so they want to learn. And even so with like some of the adult clients that I get, the first again onboarding, when I first get them, the most important thing I think while we're learning or like learning about the person is that you have to kind of know like, okay, how much can I push this person to continue to keep them coming back? Because when you're talking about like real beginners, you could really demoralize a person in one meeting. So you have to have that, okay, like how nice am I going to be to this person? And obviously for me, for the adults, it's really the way I set up the exercises that's going to like keep people from like, wow, like this was so different, we got to go work out, but like I'm not in pain, and I didn't get tortured, which is the first association with getting a go workout. Most people are scared of trainers because it's like this whole thing about like I gotta beat your like I gotta like make you hurt kind of almost. And then with kids, obviously, like I said, it's more a patience thing, because you might be going over the most fundamental things like a dribble or a pass, right? And so, like, we obviously want them to get better, but at the same time, like, how you coach that beginner is again what's going to determine if they want to keep coming to like try to get better. Because if you're too stern right away, then that's going to discourage a lot of beginner kids. Now, if you got a kid that's high level athlete, like you were speaking, then now the line is much different, because there has to be this like, hey, you were trying to do something that nobody else, that not that nobody else, but that is really hard to do, right? If we talk about like going from high school to playing at any level after high school, right? Which would include like junior community, soccer, which exists, like that's again the 0.6%. So let's just round it up a 1%. So we have 10,000 kids. We're gonna be what is that? No, 100 kids that make it. Yeah,
You got to
that's
check my
that's the
math out.
percentage. I'm not great with math, so like, or like at least on the percentage side. But that if you when you think about it that way, right? Or like sometimes I tell parents, because like their kid's on varsity or something, and they're kind of like, "Yo, your kid's kind of good. Maybe he's not playing as much, but then I got to break down to them. I'm like, "Wow, your school has 5,000 kids, right? So like to be on the team, there's 20 spots.
Correct.
If you're one of the best 20 in the school, you're pretty good. But then again, to stand out in that realm of the best 20, then that's like a whole nother conversation. And then if you want to be the best player out of like all those 20 players in every
Right.
school,
All the 20s from all the other schools.
right? So like if you're trying to be the number one player in your school and then try to be the number one player in the county and then the number one player in the state, like I guess we could rank it up that way, right? Like that each little pool that you're going into is much tighter. And so what's required of you and the way you have to approach what you do is much different than a kid who's like just trying to begin and kind of like get eventually to be even like have a good player.
Correct,
So
correct.
that's impressions right there, right? So first impressions they always are going to determine what we do with the athletes or the adults. And then obviously for you, like I said, less beginners, so off rip it has to be a little more I guess the word has to be intense, right?
Well, I guess it would be about expectations, right? You want them to have realistic expectations, like you were mentioning about the numbers, like what is really high performance and what is, what's the standard, what we're looking for, and just holding them accountable to that standard. Now, I will say there's definitely high performing, highly competitive athletes that you can discourage the same way you can a beginner. And trust me, I've been guilty. It's the line that we walk, and it's part of the job, unfortunately. And I definitely try to tone it down when I feel like a certain personality type or just doesn't respond the same way to that pressure. I myself, I remember I was a very sensitive player where like I felt like I was really internally motivated. I didn't need extra pressure from the coach, extra pressure from my dad to perform. It actually it just made it, honestly, it made me associate it with bad feelings when I played, and I played a lot better when I was free. But not everybody's the same, right? Some guys need that push, and I think part of coaching team sports is knowing, hey, when to put your arm around somebody, when to chew them out in a respective, productive manner, but to draw their attention to certain things. And part of it is understanding them and the dynamic that they're coming from at home. If I do see that a dad is too hard on a kid, that's the kid that I'm not going to pile on. I'm going to, hey, and the opposite is true. If I see that, maybe the dad's letting the kid be a brat for lack of a better word,
Really smart.
I'm going to have to come down a little bit and set those boundaries. That could be the case player per player or for the same player, because there's a time in that player where he needs support and there's a time where that player needs to be pushed. Just walking that line, understanding everybody's limits to get them to come back the next day, right? Because that's what we want. We want them to train every day and to love training every day.
Awesome. The next quick before we go into the next topic, first impressions on trainers. So what can you elaborate a little bit on that? So then I'll go after because I'm kind of interested in what you meant by that.
Well, as soon as you said that, I'm like, all right, we both matched. We got the blue on. But
Right.
of course, man, you got your company. I respect that so much. I think again, showing up presentable is part of the job, and we
For
can
sure.
talk about fashion, or we can also talk about being in shape. Not rolling out of bed. Because at the end of the day, your job is to be a leader. Your job is to motivate, to inspire people to listen to you ultimately, and be able to have something that they trust. I think it helps with trust. I know I feel better when I'm at least put together, ready for that setting.
Yeah,
What
I
about
think definitely on the head for sure with the whole presentation. You know, where I started coaching, that was one of the cool things that I took from that place was that I was like, yo, I'm gonna have some shirts. They're gonna be only for me in a way. I mean, obviously the kids get shirts all the time for as part of like training with me because they like it and I think it's obviously a great way to market yourself. But obviously it was more of the whole thing of like it looks like a uniform kind of what is a team part of? A team has a uniform, but like you kind of want to have a little bit of a uniform. And then and it's funny, and we're both married, so we're gonna probably bring up wives a lot. But my wife, she always makes me laugh because she says, Like if I go to the dentist and the dentist don't got nice teeth, like
There you
I
go.
don't know, right? And like she actually feels the same way about her trainers or like trainers, right? Like she feels, and again, this is from a woman's. This is not from me. This is not me saying this. Saying that because I know coaches that are really good that might not necessarily fit the part, and so that's
I
very
agree with
like
that as well.
that's not going to determine everything right away. But I do think for like if like you are looking for a trainer and that matters to you, then you should absolutely try to find somebody like that is going to be, that if that weighs for you, like if that's going to weigh into your decision, then you probably should like, okay, I'm going to get I want a trainer that's in shape too, right? Or whatever. But I still, want to go back on saying that I know some other trainers that are really good and really successful and they might not necessarily look the part. It just kind of depends, right? So what do you think that so in that sense, what would be some impressions things that we could look for on coaches? So I'll go first is definitely like how long have you been coaching, right? Like if you've coached over 10 years and you're successful and you could eat from it, like you could make a living from it, then I'm down to listen to you a little bit because you obviously understand something, and if it's not coaching, you understand people, which is
Right.
like I would say 60% of coaching is like we were talking about getting to know players, getting to know clients. You obviously understand people, you connect with people, people want to hang out with you, people want to spend time with you. There's something there that you understand. So that's
Getting
where I'm
better
going. I'm going to
with
go
you.
for longevity, and then that's it. Like I'm going to base it on that, and after that we're gonna have to hang out or like see what we do. But I think time in the game is super important for me to say, okay, like you're probably a decent coach, right? So what do you think?
No, I think I definitely respect the experience factor. Just because like we mentioned earlier, we know how we were when we first started and how everybody is when they first start something. You have to go through those trials. I think again, I think it all ties in like the first impression, but like being in shape conveys discipline, right? At the end of the day, that's what we're asking for our players. We want them to be disciplined. We want them to be self-aware. We want them to be conscious of how their body feels in response to certain diets, certain stresses that we go through in the workouts. So I feel like it's personally like very important to be in some kind of shape. Again, understanding that there's some big boys that know what they're talking about and that can manage groups and are great leaders. But there is also I guess a lack of discipline in some area of their life, and if you want to take like a well-rounded holistic approach that I think we both kind of agree with, because at the end of the day, we want to have great lives and be great people, not just great coaches. It's a factor. It's a factor for your health, for your performance. At the end of the day, I know I feel better when I'm in good shape, and that's an obvious statement, but it's not easy. It's not easy.
Right, right. Right, so choose your so that we go right into the next thing. Well, real quick before we go into the actual topic, but, you said, it's hard. So what I always say when I'm constantly doing this on my stories, follow me on if there's any new people listening to this, it's health coachy underscore, it's health coachy, and then let's underscore help athletes online. Coach, what's your handle so people can look for you?
It's Sergio.Mosquera.coach. So just my name, period, and coach.
Right. So obviously we're very active on Instagram. So check us out. That's probably our main place that we are like giving out free game because all that stuff is free. And obviously our clients pay for all that, but we give it away and we tell pretty much what we do on there for the most part. But yeah, I always talk about choosing your hard, right? Because like right, so like living a unhealthy lifestyle is hard. Like you don't feel great. You got to go to the doctor all the time. There's a lot of activities and things that you end up kind of not being able to do because whatever, maybe it's a disease or a condition or a mindset, right? Those all could be part of them. Or it's hard to be in shape, right? It's hard to like make good decisions nutritionally. It's hard to exercise often. It's hard to,
To
say
know
no
what
to
to
that,
do,
go to
to
sleep
everything.
earlier. Like everything that makes you so both of them are hard. Like neither of them are easy. So, but to me, it's like this goes from like we're gonna be talking about books and things. So I really like Naval Ravikant. If you guys look at him or like want to hear some stuff, but he says his trainer actually, right? This is not a fitness person, but he's shouting out his trainer, saying his trainer is a very wise guy because he taught him the easy choices, hard life, easy choices, right? So you're always gonna have to choose the path, and either way, the both paths are gonna be hard. But like I definitely think the hard choices, easy life is gonna have more pros than the cons. There's gonna be way more good attached to all that hard work than the opposite way. And again, this is like, some for some people it could work the other way. We understand that. We're not saying that it's one way or the other, but I'm at least saying that I'm definitely gonna be 80% towards the like make the hard choices because they're gonna help you live the easy life
I think
than
it's the
rather than
only
just
way
taking the
to
easy
improve.
way out technically that makes life hard, right?
Sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's making the hard choices is the only way to keep improving, man, and to have longevity. Because I've definitely have lived the other side of it, and man, I just it's like a never ending. You're never satisfied, truly satisfied. And at least for myself, um, I will ruminate over things. Whereas, man, when you commit to something, you make that choice. Yeah, it'll be hard for a few days, but you will get stronger, right? It's
Mhm.
just like strength training,
The muscle building, right? That's always a good
It's
analogy.
mental strength training, maybe we'll call it. But it's definitely, yeah, man. It's a maturity thing. It's a growth thing. But making the hard choice is the courageous thing, and I think that the courageous thing is almost always the thing you should do. And because that's where you keep growing.
Right, you gotta embrace the suck, and like we were talking about, you gotta give yourself permission to suck. Like it's gonna be hard. You're not gonna like it. It's not gonna be easy. I always think about how I'm able to, live the lifestyle I do, and I always want to say like it's more about what I don't do than what I do, right? Because what I do is very simple, but what I don't do is I don't consume a lot of certain things, and I won't eat things, that just won't eat certain things, man. I just won't do it. Like it doesn't matter what it is, but at the same time, I'm gonna like, I love soda, I love donuts, I love candy. It's just that I would say 80 to 90% of the time I'm gonna say no. And then there's that 10% gap. Cause like I always say, you gotta live a little bit, right? You can't be too unbalanced.
Right.
You can't chase perfection. I love this quote from the Power of Intention book, and it's like I'm complete in my incompleteness because I'll never get it done. Like it'll never be perfect. And like the minute you can just like relax and feel like that a little more, like you're gonna feel a lot less stressed out because a lot of it is because we're always trying to fight that like it needs to be better. But it's like, okay, if you were doing, like I always give the workout example, if you were doing one workout a week and now you're doing three, like yeah, maybe you don't look like you want to look right away because it's only been a month, but like you should definitely celebrate the fact that you went from one to three because you're holding that three and you're doing that, and that's hard. And I was wait, and it used to not be even achievable, and now you're doing it. You did it for 4 weeks technically on this example we're given. So that's super powerful for
And
sure.
I would say that at any stage, it's powerful, right? Because even if it's just a walk around the block, hey, you did it.
Right.
Let's build on that. And then, I don't have to tell you, but you've really taught me a lot about stacking days. And like, the way I heard it described once, it's like you're making a mountain with a roller of paint. So
Wow.
every day you're adding just a tiny little percent, but then when you look back over 10 years,
Right.
you have a mountain. But it's that day-to-day battle, starting with momentum, building the day with momentum, and then giving yourself love if you slip up,
Right.
not coming down too hard.
Compassionate with yourself for sure.
Yeah, because the goal is, again, I want to do this tomorrow. Nah,
Right.
maybe I only got in 15 minutes today, but tomorrow I get in 20. But
Build on that.
you
Build
know,
on that.
yeah, I build on it.
All right, so the
Um,
next two topics, like, I
what
want
we
you to
got?
tell me which one we're gonna go with first. We got attitude, character, which we kind of spoke about a little bit in the beginning, but like traits that are ideal for training and longevity. So I guess we could talk about that with like an aspect to like a child, teen, whatever, preteen development into going into sports. And then the other one is adults training. What's the smartest way? So what do you want to start with?
Well, I think the character trait we kind of been touching on. Like I would say, like if I had to, I've been thinking about this. Like one word, what would it be? People like to throw around grit, but grit is like just going hard. I think without the compassion. So I feel like the best word for me would be like it's either resolve or resilience. Like can this person overcome those challenges, even their own mental friction, to come back, and to come back with enthusiasm, because again, I feel like the only way to do something for long term, and this goes across sports or anything, I think you have to love it, and you have to learn to love it. And if you don't love it, you're not going to do it, and you're not going to do it the same as someone that does love it. So I think maybe resilience, maybe resolve. I would love to hear your word,
I
but
like
that's
I mean, I can't bring it down to a word, man, because like there's so many things that like that's another
right,
thing when I'm talking to parents mostly is like, okay, you guys want a certain thing, but like to get this certain thing, for example, let's talk speed real quick. To get fast, like it goes so much into becoming fast.
correct,
Like all right, like the first thing I'm always gonna that I hate because we're talking about children here. We're talking about 9 year olds. Like the least I try to train is at 9. Like that's usually the lowest I'll go because before that, I just don't think it's worth it for the parents. And I'm not here to steal people's money. I'm here to create, to like help kids out.
right.
Like at 9 years old, the main, I would say, um, thing that we're like trying to like again, like kind of accommodate, I would say, right? Or put or not put into one thing, but it's like, okay, are you light enough, right? Like how light, what's your weight to like body ratio? Cause like if you're a little heavy, then like how are we gonna be fast? But it's like talking to a 9 year old kid about his weight is kind of like crazy, you know? It's like, but it's a reality, right? Like, and then obviously like sleep and obviously like how much is the kid doing on the daily? Does he play? Does he not play? Like all these things are gonna go into account if somebody's fast. So we're talking about like I can't put it into one thing,
Well,
but
you
I
see him
definitely
for
will
one
say
hour.
right, and we only have 1 hour, and which is always huge, right? Because that determines so much. But I still like those two words. I think those two are still gonna be like at the top five of how I would describe that. I don't know if they're even different, but like the resolve and the resilience are everything. Like you're gonna have crappy days, so like how do you come back from those? How are you constantly, because you might have like you might be really really good for like I don't know, let's say you have this 2 month streak where you're just playing amazing, right? And then like all it takes is one weekend of you playing really bad, and then like so confidence is another thing. Obviously, like it could be broken like this, right? So how do you resolve? How are you resilient to come back and trust all the work you've been putting in, and almost having that always say the next play mentality, right? Like, all right, so that happened. I can't do anything about it anymore. All I could do now is focus on the next thing that I got to do. And I got this from Michael Boyle. Just focus on the next thing. Whatever the next thing is, try to do that right. And if you keep doing that, like not only are good things gonna happen, but obviously like you're gonna be back in your groove. But it's just with the confidence and with athletes at the youth level, I think that's really hard to manage. And it's not just because of the coaches, it's just like the life of a kid nowadays compared to like the life of a kid when we were kids. There's way more
It's a
stimulus
good
and
topic.
exposure to,
That's gonna be another
Yeah, we'll
podcast.
talk about that another one. So yeah, that the resilience resolve, I definitely think that's like the number one thing if you want to be good, right? And then you said love, right? So I like the love one because I always like the Kobe Bryant analogy that he made. He goes, okay, so you have a kid, right? And like you tell him, all right, you got broccoli, you got ice cream, right? Which is the kid more than likely gonna go for every time, right? He's gonna go for the ice cream, right?
Of
But
course,
like there's these kids, I know I was one of those kids that I like love training. I love exercising, working out, working on my game, whatever you want to call it, like trying to figure out how to get better. Like I enjoyed that because I enjoyed the sport that I played. So like that's my ice cream. That's what Kobe's trying to say. Like if that's my ice cream, you're never gonna have to like bug me to eat it because I love it. But if like I don't love that and it's like broccoli to me, then it's gonna be a little tougher for me to really like eat that all the time and like do it all the time, right?
of
But
course, of course.
but that's why the love is so important if you want to be like a high level athlete. It's like you gotta love whatever you're trying to do.
But I had a question for you though. How much does the coach factor into that? Like the coach, the environment that they
For the
set.
love, I think for the environment is super important in like the team setting, right? Like the whole atmosphere of like the team you play for, obviously the coach, the kids, because obviously the coach picks the kids. So I think that is something probably like that a good coach is thinking about, like how do we meld, how do we mend all these personalities together? Like what kind of team do I want to have, right? That's probably something you think about like even before you choose like the kids you're gonna choose for your teams, right?
Personality types.
So that's what I would say is important. But and then on the 101 aspect is back to what we were talking about. Like if you're trying to be good, right? Like any player at any level in any sport, like you're gonna have to spend years. So if a kid's training with me, I'm always telling the parents like, yo, this is a multi-year investment that you're making if you really want that result that you want. Like so obviously as the one-on-one coach, you got to be able to like get kids to want to hang out with you for a long period of time over the years. And obviously at that point it's kind of what we were talking about, like they got to think like they got to like you enough to continue to do this crazy stuff you're trying to get them to do, especially when some days it seems like nothing's happening. And then the coach is telling you like, yo, you got to trust me on this. Like, this is all part of this is all part of like the uphill. This is all part of the resolve of getting better. You know, most kids are just not, they're
There's
not
always
patient
setbacks.
enough.
There's always injuries, there's setbacks, mental hurdles, getting cut from a team, getting sit on the bench, and that's again, if you love something, I think that it's not going to be easy, but you could deal with that pain and come back stronger. Of course, as coaches, we got to support the growth of the players and help them come back. But ultimately, they got to dig themselves out and keep fighting because it's not going to get easier. I always tell them that it's going to get harder every step of the way, and there's going to be challenges every step of the way. And I think the challenges is what makes you stronger. So it's necessary, but yeah, it sucks in the moment, and it's unavoidable. But this is not a career path for the lighthearted.
Right, if you wanna play sports, man, you gotta be tough. You gotta be mentally tough, and you gotta be physically tough. I think that's another thing people don't like, we don't talk about because, like, I want my kids to be as fresh as possible all the time, but it's really hard if they're actually, like, working enough. So then back to the balance thing, like,
Mhm.
who do you pick on, right? If this kid's not doing anything extra, like, he has to work a little harder in practice, but if you got a kid that's doing a lot of extra stuff, you might wanna, like, lay off that kid a little bit because he's getting the work in. And so I think that's important. Like how much, how day to day, how the kids feel. I think the old school mentality of like, let's just run the kids to the ground and just, especially if I don't feel like coaching, like we're just gonna run. Like I think that's so detrimental to like kid development. First of all, in sports, because like you need fast players. So like the kids are always sore and beat up, like they're not gonna be that fast. Obviously, you have to have a certain level of like fitter and all that. But I always think like, I think if kids are playing enough, like they're probably in shape. They probably don't need to like that extra like conditioning day might not really make the kids more conditioned. If anything, it's gonna make them tired and sore. And then like how do you again I always like if anybody does listen to this eventually, right? Like how do you feel when you're sore and tired and go play? Like, me and you know because we do it and we've done it, right? Like it sucks. It's like the worst thing ever. It's like not. It's hard for me to really play how I really could probably play because I'm so beat up. Obviously, you're gonna be a certain level of beat up from day to day if you're all like constantly like working on your stuff. But like I think we as coaches, and I think that's gonna change in the next 5-10 years. Like how much is enough, and then depending on how much is enough, then you can have kids maybe get hurt less and play better. Which I think whoever figures that out, like whatever coaches begin to figure that out more, they're going to be the more successful ones. Because from team sports, right? That's the hardest thing, right? Injuries, right? Injuries. We just spoke about injuries, and what was the other thing that I mentioned? It's getting hurt
Just being fresh, just being
and all right,
fresh.
and feeling good and feeling
That's
good,
the
right? Like how do
game,
we feel good?
and mentally fresh. Honestly, I'm not saying you can't train every day, but you shouldn't train 3 hours every day and expect to have your best performance on Saturday because you only have so much brain enthusiasm, brain power, body power.
Everything.
I just think it makes a lot of sense, at least to incorporate 1 or 2 days where it's like, okay, maybe I'm still active, maybe I'm doing different things, going to the beach, whatever, walking around, but I'm not playing football. I'm not
Mhm.
in a gym. I'm living my life, because I think that's important too. When we talk about performance, longevity, it's okay to be obsessed, but you have to also know when to take care of yourself for, understanding that that's actually what's best for performance, not
Balance,
just
yeah.
grinding it out. Yes.
That balance, the grit, like that's why earlier makes sense. Like grit is not the way because of that, because you're just blindly going up the hill, and then like if you go up the hill long enough and you never rest, if you slip one time,
You're going to lose to the guy that does rest. That's
that's
what's
really
going to
bad.
happen
Right? Absolutely,
because
absolutely.
he's up for it.
And what you were saying, right? Like living life, whatever. Like kids and adults, like all of us, we have to limit screen time. Like we have to limit. Like for me, actually relaxing is like when you're off the phone and you're off the computer, like any type of screen. Like you want to read a book or something, I'm down for that. I think that's still way more relaxing than the stimuli you're gonna get from like this flashy green screen. So I think for everybody, like, but I think especially kids who are trying to be good athletes, like you guys got to get off the phone. You guys got to get off the YouTube and whatever. Not like completely, but you got to have some time daily where like you don't touch that
On the
because
way
you
to the
got to just
game,
give your
you can't
mind
be on the phone on
time
the
to
way to the game.
recover. You gotta like people like kids be like, I just sat at home and I played on the phone. Yeah, you sat at home playing on the phone for 2 hours. So yeah, your body might be rested, but your mind is wrecked. And then so when you go play, you're gonna still feel tired and you're gonna be like, it doesn't make sense. I listened to coach, I rested. I should feel better, but I don't. Yeah, because you didn't really like get off and completely like shut down for a little bit.
Went to sleep at midnight. The worst thing is on their phone on the way to the game.
Right.
We got a 2 hour road trip. They're on their phone. They get there and their mind
There,
is.
yeah. They're just pooped. They're just pooped. It's just all of us. We know it. We know it.
What
It's just
would you
we're
recommend? Some visualization.
yeah. I think just trying to not be exposed to anything else because you have a game in 2 hours. Again, this is back to the whole the focus. We didn't really talk about focus, but we know from playing with high level kids, they're just more focused. The high level kids are just more focused. Like they're not thinking about their girlfriend or like homework tomorrow or whatever in that 2 hour drive. They're either visualizing, right, thinking about the game, like maybe putting themselves in some mental like imagery of like plays or situations, right, or just like relaxing and trying to save their energy so when they get to the field, they're boom, all my energy's here right now, which is going to
Right.
automatically make me better just because I'm more aware of everything that's happening around me because I didn't just use all my awareness on the phone looking at it for 2 hours. Like I'm fresh. I'm ready to be like alert because I think sports we talk about all the other physical tools, but like obviously being aware and being alert, which we can call IQ, right, of sports, it's so important. And obviously, like you could be the smartest IQ guy, but if you're tired, you're gonna suck. So back to what we're saying, like you got to be fresh, your mind's got to be fresh, your body's got to be fresh. And yeah, in a 2 hour drive, I think that's what it is. Either you just don't think about anything and just like read a book or something, or you nap. So you completely sleep, right? I mean, you got 2 hours, like you could definitely sleep. Like that would be great. The last thing you want to do is definitely be on the phone for a couple
Yeah.
hours leading to that.
More on
Yeah, I
looking at
consider that
vision
phone, social
results.
media, all that. Anything in the screen, hardest thing for all of us for sure. But what will make the biggest difference for all kids.
Right. We got
All
we
right.
got
So
the final
next up,
topic or what?
yeah, yeah, let's go. So I guess next thing I'll go more into my area, but you give me a little bit. Adults training, right? What's the smartest way? And obviously I'll start that. And I think again, it's a combination. Like everything is complex. Like everybody wants to make everything easy. I think your approach when it's simple is what's gonna make you a genius if like you know how to do it simply. But obviously what it takes is not gonna be simple. It's gonna be a little bit of everything. So I think obviously you got to be weight training, resistance training, however, whatever you want to call it. It's got to be some load on the body. Again, how much is going to be depending on the person. And then cardio, obviously, like we were just talking about mental health. So for adults, cardio is great for mental health. But obviously, because we're older, heart health. That's important for us. Like a young kids don't need to worry about that. Their hard work's really good. But for us, the cardio is important because we have to be trying to like, and that's why me and you go play soccer on Sundays because we like to get that cardio. We prefer that cardio over just like jogging, which I always say to me, like nobody, like honestly, like 80% of people should not jog. There's a 20% of people who probably should, and they probably move really good and they're kind of light on their body to mass ratio that we were talking about earlier, so they could do that type of stuff. But for the most part, we want to kind of stay away from a lot of impact. Like everybody, like it doesn't matter if you're an old athlete, a new athlete. Like when you're not beating yourself up all the time, like thudding, 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 like you're gonna feel better. So if you bike for 30 minutes or walk, because walking is way chiller than like jogging for 15, like I'm telling you, you're gonna feel better stacking the days of non contact stuff compared to like the contact stuff. And then the last thing is obviously nutrition, right? Like I don't think you need to eat perfect. But touching base on what we talked about earlier, like you got to be able to say no to things at certain times. You got to be able to just sometimes is no. I mean, it sucks, but like it's just part of the game on the long term thing. Like, because if I love Starbucks and I go every day, then it's a problem, right? But if I'm having Starbucks once a week, I think it's okay. I don't, I'm not saying, do I think Starbucks is great? Do I drink it? No. Do I think it's great? No. But if that's your fix, if that's the something you like, go for it. Just be aware of what you're consuming. And that goes back to the fast food and like the snacks we eat and the food we do decide to eat that we think is healthy and all that. Like it all goes back to that. So that's what I would say in a quick, like, concise form. And I get your take on it, and then we'll elaborate a little bit more on it.
Cool. I mean, I definitely think like going back to the jogging thing, man, because you see the people out there. Yeah, that impact, especially on the hard surfaces. I know for me, it just doesn't work, and just innately, it should make sense to you, even if you don't have ankle issues or foot issues, you will eventually, And I think yeah, there's other ways to go about it. For me personally, I'm not motivated to go run for no reason. But if I'm chasing a ball, it makes sense. I'll run 5 miles. So definitely, there's different ways to pursue these things and still get the results. Going back to that love factor, because that's what's going to keep you in it. So I love going to play pickup, and for me it works. Those 2 hours for me are very special for that factor. Just to touch on the diet part, I would say try to say no at the grocery store, because saying no once it's in your kitchen is a lot harder,
That's
and
really
you're
smart.
lying to
That's
yourself,
really good. That's really
you
good.
know?
That's really smart.
So just try to say no while
Unless
you're
you're really disciplined. Like if you're really disciplined, you can do whatever because like you have control. But if you know you don't have self control, just say no at the grocery
but
store.
like
That's really
food.
smart, man. That's a good. That's gonna be one of the ones for the to use in maybe some of our other social media content stuff that we could steal
Yeah,
from it.
but for sure, like I'll be in the grocery store eating with my eyes and just not picking up the stuff, and start to build discipline that way. It's at least that's worked for me. And
Works
I
really good.
guess
It's
I
really
guess the
smart.
last part, combining the strength training and the cardio, of course, but just try to take care of yourself. Obviously, I think ultimately you don't want to hurt yourself. You don't want to be in a situation where you're out 2, 3 weeks and then you're undoing all the good stuff that you could do, So, I don't train a lot of adults, but the first thing I think about is, oh man, myself. And I just try to be nice to myself, in the sense of like, doesn't mean like there's not times to push, but just knowing when and how much. I think we've talked before, like what's the dosage? What's the right dosage? Well, it's what feels good that day, and what helps you do other stuff better, and once you start to take away from other performance parts of your life, whatever it is, I think that's when maybe that workout is doing more harm than good. You should reassess things. But
Dose.
ultimately, just trying to do things that we love every day and being aware if we are having Starbucks, okay, this is my one time for the week. It's good, but it's way too sweet. Being aware this is probably not the best thing for me. And then once you start to associate that, it'll be easier to say no, I think.
Absolutely. Not dose. I think those, I think we can touch on that a little bit for the adults training. Like dose is the number one thing that I would say that I help the clients with is like programming enough. Like how much is enough? Because that enough is going to be different for everybody, depending on their level of fitness and who they are, or like if they've had pain or they have any health issues. So like, and then I think you said it perfectly. How do you feel that day? I think you got to question yourself always. What I ask everybody, I mean, everybody could steal this. Every day I ask myself or I ask my clients, first thing I see them as, hey, obviously, hello. I say hello to them. But then right after I say hello, I'm like, hey, how do you feel 1 to 10 sore? How do you feel 1 to 10 tired? Right. So if I'm 5'5", tired, sore, the workout's got to be light. It's got to be chill. It's got to be chill. If you're like 7, 8, I mean, you probably shouldn't even work out. You probably need to go home and rest. And again, we just touch base on what rest would be, which would be like for you to actually just not do anything. That means no screen, no nothing. Like really try to find a way to relax, maybe with your family or your kids, or
Yep.
something that might give you some energy in different ways. So we spoke about that, and then if you're like a 1, 2, those are the best days to push, right? If you're not that tired and you're not that sore, then go ahead, like push a little bit. But I think definitely for adults on the daily, you probably got to be like, I don't think you should ever really be going like even 90% of like your maybe on cardio, yeah. And again, how do you know that? You got to be tracking it with something. Like you got to have a heart rate sensor or your watch or something to like track if we're getting up to those zones that we want to be at. Like in the heart rate sense, yes, we do. But like strength training is not going to do that for you. Like what you're trying to get out of it. Yeah, it'll get your heart rate up, but it's not going to like get the heart rate better. But like killing yourself, you do too much weight, you might that's like could be an injury, right? It could not, or you could just be really sore for 4 days, like we just spoke about. And then now it's hard to stack days if like you go on Monday and you really can't make it back to the gym till Friday because you were so beat up. And then the weekend, maybe you got a bunch of other things to do, and so it's just not feasible. So obviously, yeah, ask yourself, guys out there, ask yourself, how do I feel? Am I on a 1 to 10? And then based on that, kind of run that according. And obviously, we're going to be talking more about all this stuff with adults training as we continue. But yeah, the main thing here is always going to be, we're talking about sports and stuff that relates to sports. So we're on the last pretty much little bit of it. Serge, any last points you want to touch base on? Anything you want to, promote or let people know about right now?
No, not specifically promote. Just keep tuning in. I feel like it's a good conversation that people need to hear. We've been in South Florida market for a little while now, slowly building up our names and I think we're lucky. We're lucky to have each other, known each other for so long, and be in the same field. I really appreciate you, Eric, because
Same here, my bro.
you meet a lot of characters out there, and it's tough to find good people.
Yeah, that's definitely the thing. That's definitely, I would say, the hardest thing. And even in coaching's so competitive. Like nobody really wants to help each other, and everybody thinks they're better than everybody. So obviously, I'm a part of that too, and whatever. But because I just feel like a lot of the coaching sucks, and I have no problem saying that here on my podcast, or nobody can flame me for it. You don't want to listen to our podcast, whatever. We definitely feel like the quality of the coaching isn't all that, which is why if you're with us, you're gonna see the difference. We always talk about that, right? Like people don't know till they come get a session with me and you that whatever they've been doing is just not that good. Because I mean, you don't have any, like, what's the word? Any other experiences to pull from. So you don't
Right.
really know. But that's why we made this podcast too, is because we feel like we're some of those people that are really helping people out, kind of have an idea of what we're doing. We won't say we know exactly what we're doing because we're always working on learning and getting better, but we have an idea of what we're doing. And we just feel like in our industry, there's a lot of things lacking, and there's a lot of people who might be popular or might be whatever, but they're not necessarily doing the whole point of this, which is like to make their people better, to make their athletes better, healthier, whatever your coaching is about. Like that should be what your coaching does. Like that should be one of the main things within what you do, is that you should deliver the results or provide the solutions that you claim. And we just feel like a lot of the coaches are just backwards on that, and they're not doing it that way. And so we wanted to come and make this podcast to get some voices out there, and obviously eventually hopefully getting more coaches to come on here, clients, other friends that just might want to like chime into this is going to be like open, very conversational. Like this guys today was no, we didn't really plan this, we just talked about it. And then that's another thing cool, like that I appreciate you, Serge, because we talked about doing it and we just did it. And I think that's so powerful, and I think more people should like try to do that and not
The
think so
next step.
much.
Always take the next step.
Right, and just try to do it. Just try to do it. Like even if you suck and it doesn't come out good, like you just got to do it because eventually you will be better and it will get better. But yeah, man. So I loved the takes today, man. They were really really good. Follow again. Remember, follow us. Handle it's at Sergio Dad Mosquera Dad Coach for Instagram, and mine's is underscore it's Health Coach E. The same way it's spelled, the way I said it. So definitely follow us, guys, and then stay tuned. Obviously, this podcast should be out on Spotify, Apple, and we might even put it on the YouTube. My YouTube, your YouTube. So stay tuned for more conversations. We're gonna do this weekly. And yeah, any last words, Coach, before we sign out?
And I think it's a good first run, man.
Yeah, no, I think we did great. I think we've talked about it for a minute doing it. So now that we got one in the books, definitely feels good. And obviously this is exactly what we do when people are not here. This is
Right.
exactly the same thing. So it's like that's kind of why we were excited to want to create the
Yeah.
podcast. Whoever wants to listen to our crazy selves, um, definitely gets that vibe of like, yo, you would be here in the conversation with us. Nothing different, nothing scripted. This is
Right.
just
Right.
how we are. This is how we coach, and I think that's important, right? Like the people who really know their stuff, they're not like memorizing or thinking about what they're doing. They just know it and they just go with it, and it just flows like spontaneously. So I feel like that's how you are when you're talking about your soccer stuff, and that's definitely how I am when I'm talking about all the fitness stuff. So yeah, we got a great group, guys. Please share this with anybody who's into, if any parents looking to develop their kids, right? Like this is the podcast for you. Any adults that maybe want to learn about, balancing, if you have kids and you don't have kids, like I don't have kids, Coach has kids, different perspectives on that, training your own kid right? What to do with your kids, what to not do with your kids. And then obviously from that, you will obviously talk about adult in your own training. So I think if somebody like any adult can benefit from this podcast if you know if they give it a shot, because there's gonna always be some cool information that, like I said earlier, I hate to bring it up, but it's like our clients pay for these conversations right now that we're having,
Right.
and they ask us for this stuff, and we're here giving it away for free. So if you're smart enough to just take advantage of it, like that's what we do, right? We listen to Michael Bullis podcast, listen to I think it was Chris Williamson, the one you put me on, right?
Yep. Yep.
That one was so good on Naval Ravikant, right?
Yep.
So again, so like guys, the podcasts are powerful, and obviously like you can learn a lot of stuff from it. So hopefully you guys give ours a shot. And yeah, man, it's gonna be fun, and we're gonna be talking about some cool stuff, man. Some more cool stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of things, topics came up, I think, from this. So I'm excited to see the edit.
Yeah,
So
yeah, let's do it. All right, coach. Well,
brother.
signing out, Coach Connection, Mastering Youth Sports with Coach Eric and Coach Sergio. Stay tuned, guys, for more episodes. We super appreciate you guys. Sending mad love to everybody. Everybody in tryouts right now in the soccer world. Good luck. Kill it. Remember what you learned from Coach Serge. Shake your coach's hand.
That's right.
Something tiny like that can make the difference on you being noticed. So definitely bring your best impression first. All right. Take care, coach. Have a good day.
Peace.
Peace.